Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you are watching Gulf Today on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of the hour. US President Donald Trump has dismissed efforts by Israeli lawmakers to advance legislation annexing the occupied West Bank, saying Israel is not going to do anything there. The bill, which would apply Israeli law to the territory claimed by Palestinians for a future state, won initial approval in the Knesset on Wednesday. Marco Rubio has warned that Israel's move towards annexing the West Bank could undermine President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan. Speaking before departing for Israel, Rubio said the president had made clear that such annexation is not something we'd be supportive of right now, calling the Knesset vote potentially counterproductive. The United Nations has called upon Israel to allow more aid trucks through additional crossings into Gaza, saying current levels fall short of the ceasefire terms. Palestinians continue to face severe shortages of food and clean water, with many unable to return home amid an ongoing Israeli military presence. Lebanon's health ministry says 4 people were killed in Israeli airstrikes in the country's east and south. The IDF confirmed hitting targets linked to Hezbollah, saying the group had used the areas to plan attacks against Israel. A Turkish court is set to deliver a verdict today that could remove main opposition leader Özgür Özel in a case seen as a test of Turkey's democratic balance. If judges annul the 2023 CHP Party Congress results, Özel would be ousted from his position. US President Donald Trump has announced an immediate end to all trade negotiations with Canada, accusing Ottawa of egregious behaviour over a political ad featuring Ronald Reagan criticising tariffs. Trump has also imposed a 35% levy on Canadian imports, with exemptions for goods covered under the USMCA trade deal. US President Donald Trump will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea on October the 30th on the sidelines of the APEC summit. The White House has confirmed it will be the first face-to-face between the two leaders since Trump's return to office, as trade tensions rise over Washington's threat of 100% tariffs and Beijing's restrictions on rare earth exports. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has pledged that military brotherhood between Pyongyang and Moscow will advance non-stop, as reported by state media KCNA. He made the remarks at a ceremony in Russia's Kursk region, honouring North Korean soldiers who fought alongside Russian troops amid reports that more than 10,000 North Koreans have joined the war in Ukraine. Now we start this hour in the Middle East, where US President Donald Trump has dismissed an effort by Israeli lawmakers to annex the West Bank. Trump has said that Israel is not going to do anything with the West Bank. This comes as 2 bills applying Israeli law to the West Bank won preliminary approval from Israeli lawmakers. Let's take a listen in to what President Trump has had to say.
The West Bank is, don't worry about the West Bank. Israel's not going to do anything with the West Bank, okay? Don't worry about it. Is that your question? They're not going to do anything with the West Bank. Don't worry about it. Israel's doing very well. They're not going to do anything with it.
After receiving criticism from the United States, Israel has temporarily frozen the legislative process on the 2 controversial bills concerning the annexation following their preliminary approval in Parliament. Chairman of the government coalition, Ophir Katz, has announced that the proposed laws, which seek to extend Israeli sovereignty over the entire West Bank and formally annex the large settlement of Ma'ale Anim, near Jerusalem would not move forward until further notice. We are now joined by Professor Ephraim Imbar. He's a senior researcher at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. He joins us live from Jerusalem. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Imbar. Professor, we knew Donald Trump's stance on this. This was a statement made on the eve of Benjamin Netanyahu's speech at the United Nations. We knew the United States' and Donald Trump's stance on the Israeli annexation of the West Bank. Yet, on J.D. Vance's visit and post Middle East peace deal, the Knesset decided to vote on it anyway. Was this a sort of political provocation? What was the political messaging here with this?
It obviously was a political provocation by the extremists in Netanyahu's government, who are devoted to the idea of Greater Israel, and which means also annexing the West Bank. This is not within the Israeli consensus. And indeed, if we take a look at the numbers of the votes, it was approved by 24 Knesset members out of the 120, which shows actually the unpopularity of such a step. And Netanyahu, the prime minister, was clearly against it. And he tried to prevent the vote, but there are certain procedures in the Israeli parliament that he could not control. And this is why a small faction of the government brought to a vote, which is not binding the government. And I don't think that anything will come out of it.
Professor Imbar, of course, after the US was vocal of this legislation, it was redacted. What does this say about the partnership between Israel and the United States?
I don't think that it changed much. It was obviously not a very diplomatic move on part of some Knesset members to attract criticism from the United States. But business between Washington and Jerusalem is as usual. Washington is supporting Israel. It needs Israel to create a new reality in Gaza. And therefore, the close relationship between Israel and the United States is going to continue, particularly as long as President Trump is sitting in the White House. He's a great supporter of Israel, a good friend with Netanyahu. And I think that both countries will overcome this mini crisis.
Okay, Professor Imbar, hold that thought. Do stay with us. We have more information coming at our viewers. Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia and several other Arab and Muslim countries have condemned the Israeli bills that call for the annexation of the occupied West Bank. The 15 countries, including Palestine, Qatar, Egypt, and as well as the Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation, have said that they condemn in the strongest terms the two bills that earlier received lawmakers' approval in Israel. The countries have described the bills as a blatant violation of international law. Meanwhile, the Arab countries have welcomed the International Court of Justice's advisory opinion, which said Israel was obliged to ease the passage of aid into Gaza. Further, the nations have warned against Israel's unilateral actions and policies and urged global powers to stop its unlawful measures in the Palestinian territory. Professor Imbar, of course, the international community, including the United Nations, sees not just this annexation proposal, which of course we have discussed, but also the settlements inside the West Bank as illegal. Your thoughts on this statement that have come out from the Arab countries, which of course Donald Trump, we now know, values very dearly. They were of course his first foreign visit. They were that of the Gulf countries. Your analysis, Professor Imbar?
Well, first of all, the Israeli position has been that Israel has a territorial claim to the West Bank. This area was conquered by Jordan in 1949, and only two countries in the world, Pakistan and the United Kingdom, recognize Jordanian sovereignty over this territory. This is part of the mandatory Palestine, and Israel sees itself as an heir to the British mandate. The question is not the legal right. I think obviously the Jews have a right to live anywhere in the world, and more so in the area which they consider their homeland. The question is whether it is politically smart to annex the territory. And here there are differences of opinion in Israel about this issue. This government, with the support of the United States, by the way, is considering annexing parts of the West Bank, particularly those parts that are strategically important. Also, the Trump plan of during his previous tenure as president actually suggested that Israel should annex certain parts of the West Bank. And the American position is that the Israeli settlement act is not illegal. And there are countries that do not think so, but to say that a place where our prophets operated 2,000 years ago is not part of our homeland is something that is totally unacceptable to the Jewish nation.
However, Professor Imbar, one could also say that in usual Trumpian manner, he could seem to have flipped the switch in that regard. He obviously, as the new chair of the Board of Peace, has to appease the Arab neighbours of the Middle East. Your thoughts on that? Of course, we have to bear in mind that these are very close allies of the United States as well, and these are the terms that they have very much pushed forward.
I think that President Trump needs some Arab partners in order to get rid of Hamas from Gaza. They are in a better position to put pressure on Gaza to disarm and leave Gaza to some other place. But, and this is why he reacted in such a way, particularly since the Israeli move was not coordinated with the White House. So we understand the Trump position, and the government, particularly Prime Minister Netanyahu, tried to explain to Mr. Trump that this was basically a political provocation which was intended to embarrass Netanyahu. Those extremists are more concerned with their political base than the interests of the state of Israel, unfortunately. And this is why this happened.
Yes, Professor Imbar, do stay with us. We have further updates from the region. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has arrived in Israel with the goal of overseeing the implementation of US President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan, according to the US State Department. Rubio's visit follows the departure of Vice President J.D. Vance and comes at a pivotal time for US and Israeli relations as the region faces ongoing tensions. The visit has just come after Israeli lawmakers granted preliminary approval to a controversial bill, which many view as a move forward to the annexation of a territory, which Palestinians hope to include in a future independent state. Rubio has expressed concerns that this could jeopardize Trump's peace initiative, which aims to stabilize the Gaza conflict and maintain a fragile ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Rubio, who is set to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during his three-day visit, has reiterated his confidence in the prospects of the Gaza peace plan, calling it a positive step towards long-term stability in the region. Let's take a listen in to Rubio's statements.
Thank you for having us. And again, we're back here with just a little bit over a week after a very historic day where President Trump's work with our partners led to this extraordinary breakthrough. And now we have more work ahead of us, but we feel very positive about it. We're making good progress. It's amazing that in just 7 or 8 days, the kinds of things and systems that have been set up. No one's under any illusions. We've already done the impossible once, and we intend to keep doing that if we can. We have good partners that we're working on, but we feel confident and positive about the progress that's being made. We're clear-eyed about the challenges too, but the president has made this a top priority, I think, as evidenced by the fact that both Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were here for much of the week. I know you spent time with them, and the vice president just left. We crossed on the way, and then I'm here now today because this is a priority. It's a very important achievement, but there's more work to be done and bigger achievements that lie ahead. And so we're here to work on that, and we feel very positive and confident that we're going to get there despite substantial obstacles.
On the sidelines, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has expressed frustration yesterday and also disappointment following Israel's vote in favor of a bill applying Israeli law to the West Bank, a move widely seen as an attempt to annex the territory. Speaking in Tel Aviv as he prepared to depart Israel, Vance described the vote as an insult, stressing that such actions could undermine the fragile peace efforts currently underway. While expressing his strong disapproval of the move, Vance has remained hopeful that annexation would not actually take place. The bill, which gained preliminary approval from Israeli lawmakers, has raised tensions between Israel and the U.S. administration, particularly regarding the future of Palestinian territories. He also addressed progress on the Gaza peace plan, which includes the proposed deployment of a temporary international stabilization force in the Gaza Strip. He also expressed optimism about recent developments, noting that significant progress had been made in understanding the composition of the ISF. Let's take a listen in to his statements.
But I do think that we've made a lot of progress in understanding what the composition of the ISF would look like and understanding what would be necessary for it.
Okay, we are now joined once again by Professor Imbar. Professor, of course, this is an extremely complicated time. We have had this grand announcement by Donald Trump, this sort of Orwellian announcement that there is this huge peace organization that is going to be made, the Department of Peace, the Governance of Peace, headed by him, President Donald Trump. However, it's not quite over yet, is it? 96 people have died since in Gaza since 10 days of this ceasefire. Aid is trickling in at a very, very much limited rate still. You've seen this vote yesterday, and you have an election coming up in Israel next year. Of course, and also a declining popularity in the United States for the Israeli state. Your thoughts in the future of Israel and the United States, and the fragility of the situation that lays in front of us?
Well, the main problem, of course, is moving to the second stage of the Trump peace plan, which is the disarmament of Hamas and its removal from the Gaza Strip. This is a very tricky problem because I don't see the Hamas giving up easily their arms, similar to what is happening in Lebanon, when Hezbollah is also asked to disarm and they refuse. Those type of radical Islamist organizations are not eager to disarm. So this is the main test of the United States and its partners, Israel included, in moving forward. Without the disarmament of Hamas and its removal from Gaza, we cannot move forward. And hopefully the Americans will have enough clout to make this happen.
Professor Ephraim Imbar, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on the programme. We now move on over to the United States, where the US Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, denounces the International Court of Justice's advisory opinion on Israel as nakedly political after the UN's top court said that Israel must ease the passage of aid into Gaza and ensure Palestine have access to the basic needs. Mike Waltz has said that the ICJ just issued a nakedly political but fortunately non-binding advisory opinion, unfairly bashing Israel and giving UNRWA a free pass for its deep entanglement with Hamas's terrorism. Let's take a listen in to what the leaders had to say.
This is further evidence that Hamas is unfit to rule the Gaza Strip, cannot be trusted with the safety of the people in Gaza for a moment longer. And likewise, frankly, many nations have condemned Israel, and those nations should be embarrassed for their silence and for their hypocrisy as Hamas slays its own people.
As was stated by the United States, it is for Palestinians to govern themselves. There is no substitute to Palestinian self-determination. There is a critical role for regional and international actors and mechanisms in support of Palestinian governance and independent statehood, and not as a substitute to them.
Israël doit permettre l'entrée massive de l'aide humanitaire par le biais des Nations Unies et des ONG internationales. La France appelle Israël à se conformer à ses obligations, telles que rappelées par la Cour internationale de justice dans son avis consultatif du 22 octobre.
Okay, we move on to further news updates. Released Israeli hostage Matan Angrest has returned home to a large cheering crowd. Angrest was released from Gaza and returned to Israel under the US brokered ceasefire deal, in which Hamas was supposed to release all 20 hostages still alive and 28 deceased captives to Israel. The Angrest was a serving sergeant in the Israeli army when he was abducted by Hamas on October the 7th of 2023. Meanwhile, the body of a Thai farm labourer killed during the October the 7th attack has been repatriated to Thailand. The remains of Sonthaya Okasari have arrived at Bangkok's Santharabhumi airport from Tel Aviv as part of a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Now we move on over, and at least 4 people have been killed in Israeli airstrikes across eastern and southern Lebanon, according to the country's health ministry. The initial strikes in the mountainous Bekaa region killed 2 people, while a later strike near Netabia in the south claimed 2 more lives, including an elderly woman. The Israeli military said it targeted Hezbollah sites, including a military camp, a precision missile production site, and a weapons storage facility. These attacks come despite a ceasefire signed last November, which ended over a year of hostilities with Hezbollah. We are now joined by Major General Sudhakar G. He's an international affairs expert and he joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us, Major General G, here on the programme. It's a pleasure to have you. Of course, this has been ongoing along with the Israel-Gaza war and been coinciding. However, Hezbollah, its infrastructure still remains rife, particularly in the south of Lebanon. The IDF continues to strike. What can you tell us about the capabilities of Hezbollah and the fact that Israel continues to use and kill alleged Hezbollah members despite this ceasefire that was signed in November?
Thomas, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me for your show. Spot on, in your question lies the answer. I would say, as per my assessment, the moot question which the world leaders should apply and find a solution is how to disarm the Hezbollah. You see, the ceasefire which was brokered by France and USA way back in November last year, about 11 months back, that ceasefire was supposed to have been put into effect by pulling back the Hezbollah about a couple of kilometers, if I recall correctly, 40 kilometers north of Litani River and proportionate distance away from Litani River by the Israeli forces. I'm given to understand that has been done. But despite that, there are allegations, and I'm told by the United Nations representatives, UNIFIL, that there are more than 948 or so attacks which have taken place, out of which the almost good about 250 odd aerial strikes, roughly, I don't have the exact figure, and which has resulted in large number of people who have been killed. About 247 people have been killed, out of which more than 100 are civilians. So these kind of incidents, when you start going into the detail, what comes out is that Hezbollah continues to fortify and strengthen its infrastructure which was existing earlier. So why Hezbollah is coming in, I don't understand. Any peace agreement or ceasefire in this strife-torn area should have an inbuilt understanding and interpretation that Hezbollah has got nothing to do. It is the armed forces or the security forces of Lebanon who are supposed to be alongside the United Nations, the observers, the UNIFIL, not Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not an integral part of Lebanon. That is one. Second thing that I wish to highlight is, to answer your question, you see, as an ideology, it is very difficult to eradicate or eliminate the very thought and the concept of Hezbollah's. The ideology will continue. As long as the ideology continues, they will have a counter argument as to why they are doing what they are doing. They are doing this because Israel is carrying out aerial attack despite the ceasefire between November last year and now. In past 11 months, there have been large number of casualties. So how do you actually bring a stop to this? There is such a huge amount of trust deficit between the relevant stakeholders. Therefore, I would say that while Israel may continue with its concept of mow the grass, still the peace brokers who had actually got the ceasefire effective, it is about time that they call the stakeholders, reinforce the commitment which was made about 11 months back, and remind them that this is not going to take them anywhere closer to peace and harmony. This is the only way to go. Last but not the least is, no matter what we do, the concept of octopus doctrine, which is basically the octopus head continues to lie in Iran, and the tentacles to include Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Hasab Saad. These are 4H. They will continue to remain in some form or the other. It will be very difficult for Israel to neutralize them completely or eliminate them completely. Mow the grass perhaps would be one of the once in 6 months or 9 months. They have to continue doing this so as to reduce their combat capability or war fighting capability. Back to you.
So how do you think that Israel, apologies, how does one think that this issue is solved? or how does this come to an end? Obviously, the Lebanese government say that it is trying to make the action to disarm Hezbollah. Of course, Hezbollah is founded on an ideology which, as you've said, is hard to destroy. Who does the fault lie with here?
Excellent.
And whose responsibility is it?
Yes, compliment you, Thomas. This is a question which should be asked everywhere, be it in the United Nations Security Council, General Assembly, peace brokers, all stakeholders. So how do you bring this damn thing to an end? There is a political dimension, there is a military dimension, there is a dimension of trust. In my opinion, the political dimension, if you take your mind back, if I respect my memory, it was in 82, I suppose. Yes, 82, where the PLO came into in full vigor and existence. Similar kind of withdrawal was supposed to have taken place, but it did not take place. And thereafter, Oslo's agreement in 1993, what happened? Best of the intentions, the Prime Minister of Israel, Mr. Rabin, who was pushing the agenda for two-nation theory, Yasser Arafat had come into play in a significant manner. He was made president of PLO in 94. And at the end of it, what happened? Rabin was murdered by none other than provocated by Netanyahu himself. He was in the background. He had some conspirator. He went and shot him dead in broad daylight. So all that, there are many such things which have happened. I'm trying to highlight one issue. Politically speaking, we have to be very, very clear, because the Israel is not showing any inclination or indications of accepting any space for Palestinians. Therefore, I doubt if there is a solution. So until unless the relevant, the main primary stakeholder agrees or accepts that there is a place for Palestinians as per the two-nation theory, which was accepted way back in 1948. And mind you, in Oslo's agreement, number of agreements have taken place. We need to prevail upon Israel. They have to modify their thought process and accept the existence of the two-nation theory, one. Number two, negotiations. Negotiations will be effective, and the outcome of the negotiations will be effective. What is the outcome we are looking at? We are looking at there should be end to this mindless conflict. This mindless conflict will come to an end as long as there is a mutual trust and respect for each other. That mutual trust and respect will not come about if there is a half-hearted attempt by the United States of America, because the complete conflict in Middle East is being driven by the deep state, and Netanyahu is part of the deep state. And third and last point, when you talk about the trust deficit, join the dots. No security situation in Middle East or anywhere in the world is going to give you the right deduction if it is studied in isolation. What is happening in Hezbollah? What is happening in Hamas or in Gaza Strip? What about the Houthis, Yemen? Day before yesterday, there were reports coming that Pakistanis have been seen handing over the armaments and the weapons to the Yemen Houthis. So Pakistan, we are talking of Pakistan coming in for the Abraham Accord, seen supporting Iran. These are the new dimensions which are emerging. Hezbollah has been seen in Venezuela. Whether it is part of the propaganda or it is a real report, I really can't comment. These are the dimensions which have to be kept closely under check by the International Monitoring Agency, and we need to play a very defined course of roadmap with time-bound points to be adhered to by each of the stakeholders. Only then things will go up, and the central issue is Israel is the mainstay. It has to agree to a two-nation theory, and on their commitment, facilitating their welcoming them to their area. Particularly a little while back you were discussing about West Bank. If the Israeli cabinet is actually proposing for annexation of West Bank, which rightfully should go to the Palestinians, then what kind of trust can you build? So these are multiple issues, a collage of these issues which are generating trust deficit have to be addressed collectively by serious and as sensitive people who are sensitive to both, not only to Israel. A bipartisan kind of a decision has to be taken for the larger good of the humanity and bring this mindless conflict and genocide against the Palestinians to an end as early as possible. Because one point will trigger the second will trigger the third, incidents and the violent activities. We have to identify the potential trigger points and address them squarely and boldly. Back to you.
Yes, Major General Sadar Karji, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Always a pleasure to speak to you. Well, that is a wrap on today's episode of Gulf Today. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world. Thank you for joining us.